The past week saw 2 updates for Modern Warfare, one to introduce a ton of content with update 1.10, and then also one to fix a little bit of stability the day following with 1.11. Now, as we talked about the other day, it wasn't specifically stated, but there was some slight tuning on the back end for some weapons, thus knocking some weapons out of our previous top 5 spot, and also with the introduction of new weapons, is it possible that some of those came up to the top 5? Today I want to talk to you guys about my picks for the top 5 weapons in Modern Warfare after the most recent updates of 1.11, and of course let you guys know what you can do well with in pretty much any capacity when you want to jump into the game. So of course, as always with these are subjective, they are my own personal thoughts and opinions. If you guys have any that differ or you think should be in the top 5, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But before we begin, if you are new to the channel and want to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare on a daily basis, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button to stay up to date with all of it. But anyways, let's talk about our weapons. A short little preface here to this is the fact that because of, well, some weapons weren't tuned, some of these are still overlapping from our previous. They retain their spots in the top 5, but more specifically, I think there are 2 that definitely make their way into the top 5 here with these most recent updates, and we'll start with those ones first. Now, the first one here out of this is one that I think was honestly a very borderline weapon from the very beginning, from the last update and maybe the top 5 placings even before the last one we discussed, that being the Odin. Now, the Odin is a weapon that has an absolute fantastic damage profile, but a lot of the other things really hinder it and make it something that players won't really gravitate towards because it's not a quick snap weapon, it's not a fast fire rate weapon, but it is a sheer powerhouse if you can compensate for that and you can get used to it. The Odin has, off the top of my head, one of, if not the most powerful damage profile of the rifles, and so it's something that naturally will have a lower fire rate and, of course, a slower ADS time. But as with all weapons, you toss on the right attachments, you end up having the ability to compensate for that, to mitigate some of those negatives and bring it up more so to just an overall positive. Things to improve your movement like the F-Tac XL Elite stock or the sleight of hand option for your reloads, because the reload itself is honestly pretty slow as well. Things like your stippled grip tape for that quicker ADS time, and the one that may sound kind of strange to you is the special suppressor that you can put on it. The Colossus suppressor ends up obviously giving that suppression for the shots, but it also is a rare case where it offers damage and recoil control as positives for only slight negatives of the ADS speed, which you can mitigate with the grip tape, and of course aim walking steadiness, which is something that is rather controllable on its own. The only thing that I will say is that it is kind of a bummer that this was kind of one of the ones that was shadow adjusted or shadow updated, in which it seems like there may be a slight recoil penalty now on top of where it was, but it is still something that if you can manage that, it is fantastic. Again, it only takes 2 shots in a lot of cases, 3 at range, and depending on where you hit the body, but definitely give that a go. I don't know if I would say that it is the number 1 weapon since we're starting with it here on this. I'd probably say it's maybe number 3, number 4 out of all these, but it is still something that is a fantastic weapon, and given some shifting and placing because of shadow updates for, say, the AK-47, I think this kind of takes a spot in that top 5 now. The other weapon outside of this is one that is a more so personal preference based one. I like it because it's a very mobile weapon. It does have some quirks like recoil, which isn't the greatest, but with the right attachments, you can end up making it something that is absolutely fantastic, that being the brand new weapon of the Ram 7. Now, right up front, I would definitely say if we were ranking these, I'd probably put this at number 5. It's very easily something that could be knocked out of the top 5, but just because it is new, I might have that upped feeling for it. It might still be that honeymoon phase, but it was something that when playing around with it, even early at the capture event that we had in Los Angeles a week or 2 ago now at this point, it was something that I really did enjoy the feel of this weapon. I felt mobile with it, I felt like I could beam players from across the map, and it felt like it was easy enough to control. Now, I'd definitely say take this more so in a close quarters or medium range engagement, but it definitely can at range get the job done. You just have to be tremendously accurate with it. I know that at the further distances, it does take quite a bit of shots, and that's something that even whenever I was shooting at somebody at one of our pre-release games at the studio, I was shooting across the map at somebody on a ladder climbing up, and I didn't secure the kill, so it depends on how far you are, really. But overall, I thought it was a very good one because of, again, that mobility. It was something that just felt like a more so weapon suited towards run and gun playstyles, but with the power of an AR. Real quickly before we continue, this video is brought to you in 4K in part by my good friends at Elgato Gaming, who recently sent me over their brand new 4K 60 Pro Mark II to help further push the boundaries of the content we make here up on the channel and the quality in which we can record them at. The Mark II compounds on the already awesome 4K 60 capture ability by adding in support for HDR10 imaging capture, as well as multi-device support, so that if you're, say, a streamer and you want to stream but also want to record some gameplay, you can do both. Huge thanks to them for the capture card. If you guys are interested in checking it out for yourself or any of the other suite of devices they have, click the link in the description below. Outside of that, we do get into some of the repeats, some of the ones that have retained their positioning here with this, and I'd say probably that these are the top 3 in my opinion still. Firstly, let's start out with the MP5. This one has been one of my favorites as of recently. I've really just been trying to go for camos on this, but it's something that with the right setup, it seriously is fantastic. It isn't something that will, say, outgun an M4 at range, but it is something that in close quarters, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a weapon that can actually keep up with it if you're accurate with it. And of course, with the right loadouts, say like the 10mm rounds, which offers more increased damage for each shot, that's something that if you're accurate, your enemies don't really stand a whole heck of a chance. Overall, if you end up putting things on it like the FTAC collapsible stock, you end up having the stippled grip tape, you have that FSS light barrel, you can kit it out to really be a weapon that will snap onto enemies. And depending on how your aim is with the weapon itself, or just in general, you can have some of the fastest ADS times, and at that point, your opponents literally won't have the time to read and adapt to the situation, and before they can even get their gun up in a lot of cases, you'll end up securing the kill. And that's something that obviously, if you want to be a run and gun mobile player, that's absolutely huge. You want to be able to get in and out, you want to be able to take as little damage as possible, because if you're out in the open, you're going from point A to point B, that's something that players can pinch you, they can take you out. And so if you can avoid that at all by simply just being the quickest one out there, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't. Now, outside of the MP5, the M4A1 I still think has retained its crown. I'd say that the M4 is probably around the middle of the pack right now, just because there are weapons that I think situationally can outclass it, but if you're talking about an overall weapon, I don't think that we'll see the M4A1 ever dethroned in the top 5, just because of, again, how universally it can be used in a magnitude of situations. You can take it in close quarters, you can end up securing kills at medium range, you can tap or burst fire at long range, and be able to get kills off with absolute ease. The damage profile of it, mixed with the lack of recoil, mixed with the fire rate, it really makes it hard to come by for a weapon that at all situations will outclass it. Again, like we said, situationally, there are definitely weapons that I think can do better. Say if you are somebody that's taking a little bit slower, the Odin, for example, like we just mentioned, absolutely demolishes it in its damage per shot values, but it is something that overall, the M4A1 is probably better suited for close quarters play, probably suited more so for engagements where you might have to snap to enemies. And so in that case, it still kind of just stays there because it's overall just really freaking good. And the final weapon that I'd still put within the top 5 here is the AUG. This is an SMG that I've had a lot of fun with as of recently again, and it's still one that with the 5.56 rounds on it is fantastic. It brings it up to, again, more so damage comparable to an AR, but with the mobility of an SMG. And if you like to run and gun, if you like to get in and out of close quarter situations, you're going to be hard pressed to find an SMG that can do better. I still think that personally I would take the MP5 over this, but it's a very close one here, in which if you were to take them head to head, I think it may just depend on the loadout and the map if I were to directly compare 1-to-1 MP5 versus the AUG. But definitely a fantastic weapon, and one that I definitely think you should try if you haven't done so already. And of course, that is the 5 here that we have in terms of the top 5. But let's talk a little bit about why I think that some of these shifted. Let's talk about an honorable mention, that being the MP7, and what we may see for future top 5s if these at all change with this. Now, firstly, let's talk about the MP7, because that is an honorable mention like we talked about in recent videos, and I think even the last top 5. This one was kind of like right on the borderline. I'd say that right now the MP7 and the AUG are probably my 2 borderline weapons with this. Though, of course, like we mentioned, the Ram 7 out of these 5 I'd probably say is number 5, but if we're talking SMG and situational play, I think that the AUG or the MP7 in some cases could be interchangeable. The MP7 still has a very easy to control recoil. It's something that has the mobility matching that of, say, the MP5, and with the right loadout, you can absolutely snap onto enemies. There is no magazine or anything that makes the damage better, but it is something that overall, if you're accurate with it, you can control that recoil, the minimal there is. You might not need that increased damage based off the rounds you end up using. But that's my honorable mention here with that one. As for why I think some of these shifted, though, it was a tough one, but the AK-47, you may have noticed, wasn't actually in this list despite being in the last two, potentially the last three or all three that we've done here with this. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the AK-47 recently seemingly had a shadow nerf to it, where not listed in the patch notes, but changed on the back end, was an increase to the recoil on the AK-47. Damage per shot wise, the AK is still fantastic, but if you hold down that trigger, if you're not somebody that may be able to control the recoil as much, it kind of knocks it just outside of the top 5, I think. It makes it something that is a little tougher to control, but for the overall sake of the top 5 weapons, I think that it just boots it outside of, and therefore, in my mind, why the Odin may in fact even take its position over. So that's another tough call that I think personally may come down to situational based, but to me, I think it got a little bit knocked outside of this here. But ultimately, that is where we're at right now after update 1.11, and that's where we're going to wrap it up. So I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. Is there anything in particular you would add to this list, maybe take away? Is there anything you agree, disagree with? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare, and of course, on a daily basis. If you guys want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, wherever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But let's get out of the way. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Mine is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.